Okay, well, let's get started. Filling out the first question, I'm sure you guys are already on to that. So let's brainstorm and talk about this first question. The nightmare that keeps families awake. All of you guys have great insight to that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to keep note of bullet points that come up. But we'll start, and who would like to start with that question?
Hi, I'm Sheldon Zeiger, and what keeps families up at night, I think, is just, the common theme is just fear. Fear of new experiences, fear of change. It's that, and until they get that fear, they control that fear, it's really hard to make informed decisions. So I think what keeps families up at night is just fear.
My name is Tom Horn. One of the things that keeps families up at night are moms and dads who are interested in passing on their estates to their kids and are worried to death that they'll get the balance wrong.
Dan Felix, the professional trustee.com. In my world, families are kept awake by anger and challenges of dealing with a trust and the family succession that they're not prepared for. They're not prepared for emotionally. They're not prepared organizationally. They may have some good preparation legally. They may have some good preparation financially, but all the other pieces are causing a real nightmare.
Cindy Levitt, Piece by Piece, pxporganizing.com. One of the things for us was the confusion and the lack of communication. As a family member and power of attorney and all the roles that I've taken on with my sisters, a lot of it was we didn't know what was in the paperwork. There wasn't the communication. There weren't family meetings. It was just very much a learning experience and a lot of confusion and communication and clear discussions about what was in the healthcare power of attorney, financial, all those things would have been so helpful.
What has never ceased to concern me is in any family in the United States, there is little or no discussion around money, period. And I don't care whether there's a lot of money or no money. And that leads to all kinds of assumptions, strange notions of entitlement, et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing that I think is important is when there's a special needs person involved, there's a lot of concern and fear about that as well.
Debbie Feldman, Deborah Feldman and Associates. Email is feldman.deborah@comcast.net. Attached to all of this, too, is the whole healthcare side. There's not conversation between parents and their kids as to what their end-of-life wishes are. And there needs to be a lot of conversation about that as well with regards to doctors and medical conditions and what their actual end-of-life choices are.
Hi, I'm Sue Romberg with Living Legacies. An issue that many families deal with are the many stories and history within families that needs to be passed on, and if that doesn't get passed on, it's lost or not captured in some way, which adds meaning and value and fun and understanding of who people are within their families and what there is in the richness of the family that is there to be shared and enjoyed and passed on to future generations.
Hi, Bill Hayes, Kenilworth Asset Management. I think appointment of executor. Which child or who would be the executor causes for a lot of ill ease and anxiety.
Mario Correa, CorreaLaw.com. What I've noticed is what keeps families awake at night is basically uncertainty. Meaning every family's uncertainty is different. It depends on their situation. So you have to learn their story, analyze what their needs are, and bring in the other professionals. In addition to my being an attorney, I bring in other professionals as well to kind of address that individual situation, to try to come up with a plan or roadmap to address that uncertainty.
Tom Horn, thefullpicture.biz, B-I-Z. Another concern that I've seen families have where there's stock and a business involved in the estate is not only how to transfer the stock, but who to pass control of the business to.
Okay, that's quite a bit, which is great. So let's move on to the second question, which is what should be keeping them awake? Maybe what things have they not noticed that as professionals, you guys obviously noticed, what should be keeping them awake that maybe they haven't thought of?
Mari Correa, Correa Law. What I see keeping families awake at night is sometimes there's assumptions made by the parents that the kids don't necessarily hold, or the next generation doesn't necessarily hold. And when there's that breakdown in communication, perhaps sometimes the parents assume that the children want to be business partners together in some large family asset. And that assumption, while it might be true for some of the children, isn't true for all the children. And unless that communication is had with the children, what exactly that plan is going to look like, then that leaves issues open for the next generation to be in conflict with. Because now, instead of having that matriarch or patriarch in control, now you have the power diffused among several parties, and that can be the seed to litigation or at least ill will in the family.
Francie Stavish, FrancieStavishandassociates.com. I think one of the nightmares is for the adult child to decide when is it time for the adult child to talk to their parents and or take action when they see them, like after holidays. There's a lapse of time between seeing them and they notice a decline and don't know what to do about it.
Michael Stewart, Michael at SLA-law.com. I think that clients don't know what they don't know. They need to be educated as to the issues that are out there, and if they knew what was out there, they would take action. But not having a discussion about end-of-life decisions with parents, I think, is a big issue.
I used to do a whole lecture on this about why wills and trusts exist, and what people should be thinking about is that the law in this area, as you pointed out, is not intended to help you in any way, shape, or form. It's intended to enrich the state and make sure that at every point in time, the state knows who owns what so they can tax it, period. That's the only purpose of the law. And if people understood that, they should be thinking about the fact that if they're relying on the law to help them, it isn't going to.
Dan Felix, the professional trustee.com. Trying to build on the knowledge that's been discussed here and the issues, I wonder if part of this then is a lack of awareness. In other words, thinking that our lives are just what happens today, what we have on the agenda for today, our family, our business, and not thinking about it that there's, for lack of a better word, an intergenerational context. We're gonna die. There's things that are going to flow from that, and the assumption that it'll all be taken care of, or I don't need to pay attention to that, is really punitive on, or can be punitive on the rest of the family who has to deal with cleaning up the mess.
Creating some proactive things that we can do. This is probably a lot of what is going to come out as far as content is concerned. First we stir up the nightmare, and then now we get to, our brains are already, I'm sure your brains are already going to, where's the solution? Where can we be proactive? What things can we implement in the community?
I think that what I've learned over the years, Joe Ginsberg, lgattorneys.com, is that it's incumbent upon professionals to create a safe environment for communication. Everything we're talking about, in my view, deals with communication, proper communication, communication at different levels between and amongst family members, stakeholders in a business, family stakeholders, non-family stakeholders in businesses. It's all about communication, and it's incumbent upon us to figure out ways to create safe environments to do that.
Tom Horn, thefullpicture.biz. Building on what Joe was saying, creating that communication process as early in the relationship of the parents as possible. Like even before there are kids, like recognizing there will be events in the future and starting that communication process.
Mario Correa, CorreaLaw.com. And as a part of that communication along that kind of line is also, and something I've got gained a great deal out of this group, has been understanding and understanding different personalities, the motivations. It's actually not only hearing the story, hearing the person, but hearing the story and understanding exactly what drives and motivates that individual person, because that gets to the underlying driving forces that can avoid conflict and create a more harmonious situation, whether it be in family or in business.
Sheldon Zeiger, and first of all, I just a note here that I am just overwhelmed by the quality of the conversation that I'm hearing. So I just want to thank you all for that. Number two is, it's really, I'm Jewish, but I'm also a Buddhist. And the Eightfold Pathway is a way of solving all the life's problems through education. And really what everyone's talking about here with communication and such is that we, as trustees, as fiduciaries, need to educate. That's our job, to educate the rest of the world regarding these matters.
Cindy Levitt, Piece by Piece. So one of the things my dad used to say when I would try to bring up these conversations was, it'll all have a way of working itself out, and the papers are in the box. And so ultimately, during the 7-week period between his diagnosis and death, when we actually looked at the papers and then had to deal with that, it was just a lot of things that he had remembered wrong, like who was the executor was wrong in the paperwork. So one of my goals in moving forward and creating workshops and panel discussions or whatever I'm going to do with my clients is to create a way that the generations can come together in a non-threatening way to talk. And one of the ways is over appetizers and cocktails. So I'm partnering with a senior agency in Evanston because I feel like with the parents that I had that didn't want to have the conversation. So if someone had said to me, okay, your parents don't want to talk, but here's some ways that you should inform yourself. Or if I could have given my dad a questionnaire, fill it out, Dad, and mail it back to me. If you can't have the honest face-to-face, then let me get the information from you. And so I'm trying to think creatively about how to prevent my clients of whatever age group from going through kind of the quick learning curve. So I feel like one of the solutions is to get very creative about how you initiate these conversations about end of life, death, what your kids are going to deal with, because then there's anger and feelings of unfinished business when you're trying to guess what would that person's wishes have been. So I see part of our solution collaboratively is how do we all, from our various professional perspectives, ensure that conversations are happening so that our clients and our own family members are served well.
Sue Romberg with Living Legacies, tagging on to the issue of communication and stories. You know, stories teach us a lot, and sometimes the hard things they have to say or the things that are really in their heart can come through in the stories that they tell. And finding ways to get beyond the mom keeps telling the same story over and over. There may be something in that that's left unsaid for her that needs to be said, and maybe it needs to be said a few more times before she's finished with that. But there's messages in there that we can hear that are gold about what's important to her, what she wants for the family, what she wants for each of the children, that can be priceless, really, in terms of the family's benefit, but also people understanding where they came from and what those stories mean for their life moving forward that they're going to pass on.
Add some structural concepts to trusts, estates, wills, and the conversations that actually require all members of the family to sign off and state that they've read the documents or had conversations with the family so that the colorfulness of the family is witnessed inside the documents and not excluded.
I've been a member of a group called the Family Firm Institute for more than 25 years. And about 5 years ago, they went international. When we went international, I was surprised to be exposed to families that have actually been in business together and working together around wealth for many, many generations. There's the oldest one they've been able to track is, believe it or not, a family that's been in business together for 700 years in Japan and have amassed enormous wealth. I've been involved in creating governance structures for families and businesses, and they're separate. They're not the same. Where families have constitutions that can run 40 pages, they have agreements for everybody who's a member that have to sign off on it. They have rules for meetings, family meetings I'm talking about, not just corporate meetings. And these are families that work very, very, very well together. What's interesting to note about that, there isn't one family that I've worked with that doesn't encourage inclusion of children at what most people would regard as an extremely young age as part of the process. Look, I'm going to go to my grave trying to change the culture in this country about this, because my personal belief is if we don't figure out how to do this and people keep creating systems that give money to Wall Street, with all due respect to investment bankers, to invest for them, we're going to become a second-class country in no time. Taking wealth out of private hands and giving it to public, semi-public institutions, which I regard Wall Street, to deal with our money is a huge mistake. They don't do a very good job of it if we haven't laid testimony to that fact. I mean, it's horrible. And these families don't do it. They have eleemosynary arms, they have educational arms, they have political arms, and when they have huge wealth, they do it all. Within the family. As a matter of fact, in these families that are in the 4th, 5th, and 6th generation, it's more of a stigma not to have tried something to enhance the family name, because the family name becomes a brand, regardless of whether it's money-making or it isn't. It's more of a crime not to try than to try and fail.
Francie Stavish and Associates. I come in at the very end. My company comes in and literally does the dirty work. The adult children who are fighting as adults, the issues they are fighting about do not stem from today. It goes back to childhood. So the 3 children, adult children, who are fighting over a blue plastic bowl that they had breakfast with at their grandmother's house separately, are fighting still over that one family bowl, and that didn't start as an adult. That's from childhood.
Cindy Levitt with Piece by Piece Professional Organizing. One of the other things that I'm concerned about is, one of the things I've learned is that if you have money towards the end of life, things are a lot better. You can hire care managers, you can hire great attorneys, you can do all this, but then there's the situation for most of Americans where there isn't this wealth and asset management aspect. It's the, what are we going to do because we're running out of money? And I'm hoping that the Collaboratory's mission is to educate more broadly. I have a master's in education, so I always look at everything through the lens of education, and trying to educate people about these kinds of conversations should happen even if you think you're going to run out of money at the end of life. Again, my parents lived larger than they should have, and up until the end, I didn't know that there wasn't money for end of life. So I'm dealing with a Medicaid application for my mom's care in another state. So my learning curve is get a lawyer in another state, figure out the paperwork. Her private pay at the nursing home she's at in the dementia unit is going to run out in like 7 to 8 months. So my sort of heart goes out to families that aren't going to have the money to do in-home private care. Hospice is great. This facility I'm really interested in learning more about, because I had 2 not so great experiences with hospice in Missouri for my dad. But I'm hoping that the mission is not just to sort of position our information to people that have the wealth, but middle-class people, people that don't have the money, so that everyone knows. Have these conversations with your family members. Talk about, I'm not sure what the sort of statement of wishes is that we were, I love every idea that comes out that makes communication happen.
I want to build on some things that we've talked about in a very narrow sense, putting a name on something we've been talking about. It's some vocabulary distinctions that I just learned of. Some of you may already know it. It's the difference between closed estate planning and open. Closed estate planning is the classic paradigm that we've grown up with, which is mom and dad decide, everybody else finds out, right, at the hospital room, in the lawyer's office, after disability, after death. In contrast, the open planning involves discussions at some level with the family. Of course, there's a continuum between completely closed and completely open. But perhaps knowing of that distinction will be another tool for us to be able to educate and talk with clients and give them some choices, and perhaps make some education, if not advocacy points, to say, there may be some benefits in a more open system than a more closed system.
Right away in my mind, it starts calculating, trying to process, because my mind is a very strategic thinker. It's actually one of my top 5 strengths in Strength Finders, if anybody's ever done that. And so one of the things that right away my mind is going at is, education and having some sort of introduction and some sort of process, some sort of, process that you take everybody through that you guys are all on the same page with. Obviously, I don't know what that's going to look like, but if you guys can create a process or a system where no steps are being missed. I mean, that's the point of finding a solution, where no steps are being missed and you thoroughly go through it. I think there's going to be a lot of success there. And now just take this as for what it is. I'm just throwing it up there as an idea. But also, one of the things that I have been doing is reading, actually, I was listening to, has anybody heard of the book, The Lean Startup? Okay, so in this, he talks about how creating a pilot of something and then testing it out on the customers, because entrepreneurs think they know what the customer needs. So they come up with all this stuff and they, invest all of this money, and then they go and put the product out and they didn't pilot it at all. And it fails. So he talked about how he lost $40 million. He got the smartest people in the room, all the IT guys, they spent all this time and they thought they knew what they were doing. And it's so interesting until you actually get into real life with real people and seeing if that's going to work. Are they going to use it on their phone? Are they going to go to this event and whatnot? So anyway, what I thought of when everybody's talking, kind of as an independent observer, not in the industry, is that if you guys can create some sort of system and go through that pilot and everybody goes through it and everybody adds their piece to it, because you guys are all vital, important pieces to it, and then pilot it and keep perfecting it 2.0, 3.0, till it becomes something really great, you guys can really find the solution to all of these things in one. Because it's a system that, and we all know that systems really work. It's not necessarily the people. And then one other small note, and then we'll move on to the next thing. I feel really blessed to be in the room today because I was just sitting down on Sunday with breakfast with my Zilligan family. It's a huge family. It's on my mom's side. And I was sitting next to my grandma, and her brother just passed away. And she used... she doesn't really have a lot of money right now, and she used the last bit of her money to get to Arizona to check out the house. Well, anyway, everything's a mess, of course, right? Everything's a mess. She can't even find the passwords inside of his bank accounts. She has got nothing. And she's scared to even take another flight over there because she's scared that she's uncomfortable with the whole situation. She doesn't know who to trust. And, me and networker, I'm like, I just met with Dan, and so she's like, but she's still hesitant whether she can trust, right? So anyway, I just wanted to say that I feel blessed to be in the room today because I really think that, I can transfer, obviously, some sort of expertise over there since I'm staying in a room full of, you know, the best people in the Midwest. So anyway, I just wanted to set that note of synchronicity, and I feel really blessed that synchronicity has brought, you know, that bridge to my grandma who is too scared to even take one step. So.
Yeah, so now it's back to you. Go bring us home. You have 2 minutes.
Bring us home. Okay. So I can talk about things that Dan feels uncomfortable talking about because I love talking about business growth and sales. So I'm going to talk about that for a moment. So I want to thank all the guests who attended today. We're very excited that you were able to be with us here today. And so we've heard about all the spiritual reasons to be part of this and to really make a difference and to come together as a group and to bring on change. But I think there's also very selfish reasons to want to join a group like this, right? We're all in business, we want to grow our businesses, and as far as we know, this is really a group, one of its kind in the Chicagoland area. And so there's tons of quality here in terms of people who attended, in terms of content that's here, and so there's a lot of opportunities for networking with each other, referring business to each other, and also to really be able to be part of a group that is this solid and has a reputable following and members. It's just a plus. And to be able to say, you know, I belong to part of the Chicago Conservatory and we have these ethics and code of ethics that we operate by, it's just a huge win. So we would love for you to join us and come on board. And if you have any questions, Dan will stick around afterwards for a little bit. I'm sticking around, and, you know, please join us, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Nice to know you.